भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्यईश्वरम्। ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिधि नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादि पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मदेगबंधो मत्संगिन मद्गुरो मन्महाधना मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्या मदानंद नमोस्तुते। So today we are looking at Chapter 4 of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this fourth chapter actually is that which deals with the arrival or the appearance of Narada Muni. That is what this chapter is dealing with, the appearance or the arrival of Narada Muni at Vyasadeva's ashrama. So this is the chapter where we will actually see how Vyasa, the question about how Vyasa compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. So this chapter has 33 shlokas in total, and the first 13 shlokas are dealing with the questions by Shaunaka Rishi and questions like regarding the compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam, questions about Shukadeva Goswami, questions about Parikshit and why Parikshit gave up everything. And then in the second part of the chapter speaks about Vyasa Maharshi and how he divided the Vedas into various parts, and then how Vyasa was dissatisfied with this whole thing. And then the end of the chapter actually is talking about Narada Muni's arrival at Vyasa's ashrama. So the chapter is beginning with, on hearing Suta Goswami speaking, the Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Shaunaka Rishi is very eager for Suta Goswami to start the description or start the narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he is talking about Suta Maharshi. He says, Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatamvara Katham Bhagavatam Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chuka. That is, Shaunaka is saying, "O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami." So initially they are glorifying Suta Goswami as the speaker to them, because already in the previous chapter we saw that how Suta Maharshi said that, I have heard this great wonderful narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam from that most elevated speaker, namely Shukadeva Goswami, and I shall try and relate it exactly like that. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he speaks about how learned man behave? You know, and why Shaunaka Rishi is glorifying Suta Maharshi? Iti Bruvanam Samsustya Muninam Dirga Satrinam Vruddha Kulapati Sutam Bahvurcha Shaunako Abravid. That is, Shaunaka Rishi is actually congratulating Suta Goswami. And Prabhupada says that is because this Srimad Bhagavatam has to be spoken by realized persons. It cannot be spoken by a parrot, and it cannot be spoken by someone who has some material motives behind speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. So, the glorification of the speaker is for his realization of this truth of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why Suta Maharshi is being glorified by Shaunaka Rishi, and they are very eager for Suta Goswami to start speaking about the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he is saying, please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, because they are all very eager to hear. This is a symptom of great devotees. Great devotees are always eager to hear Bhagavata Katha. In our situation, we have to be forced, or we have to practice hearing of Bhagavata Katha. We have to practice speaking of Bhagavat Katha, because it is not coming spontaneously to us. But when you take the assembly of sages in Naimisharanya headed by Shaunaka Rishi, we understand that they are already very ripe enough to become so eager to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that has to be presented also like that. Srila Prabhupada very clearly says that it has to be presented by a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami. And then Shaunaka Rishi is continuing to ask his question. He is asking in what period and at what place was this first begun, and why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? You see? So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a very, very special literature of Srila Vyasadeva. You know? That is why Shaunaka Muni is asking like this. Because this is unlike, or this is greater than anything that has already been done by Vyasa Maharshi. Like all the Veda Vedanta Upanishads, and then the Itihasa, and then the Puranas, and now finally the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is actually a work of greater importance than everything else that is compiled by Vyasa Maharshi. So he is asking that what is the background of this? And then in the next 4 shlokas, their question is about Shukadeva Goswami. They want to know, who is this? Tasya putro mahayogi samadran nirvikalpaha ekantamatir unnidro gudho mudha iveyate. That is, they are asking, who is this son of Vyasa Maharshi? Samadrin nirvikalpakaha. He is actually a equipoised nirvikalpa. That means he is a monist. He is an impersonalist, and he was always concentrating on that oneness. But he is ekantamatir unnidro gudho mudha iveyate. So he was transcendental to all mundane activities, and therefore he appeared like an ignorant mudha. Okay? And then Shaunaka Rishi is continuing, he is saying, when Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels were bathing naked, covered their bodies with cloth, although Srila Vyasadeva himself was not naked, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sages inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female, but the sage made such distinctions. This is actually that Pandita Samadarshina verse is there in Srimad Bhagavatam, as to how a Pandita is able to see the Atma and the Paramatma within all the bodies that he is seeing. You know, whether it is a dog or an elephant or a Chandala, he is seeing everyone equally. Now, here you take Shukadeva Goswami, who is actually a young boy of 16 years old. You know, and he is walking completely naked. He is a complete Avadhuta. Shukadeva Goswami. He is complete Akinchana Avadhuta is. Meaning he has no care about what the world will think of him. That is Avadhuta. You know. That is why he was not wearing any dress, because he was not into anything that is worldly. And when he was passing by a lake and there were young girls bathing there also, and when Vyasadev passed after Shukadeva Goswami, they all covered their bodies. And when Vyasa is asking them, just now my son went, he is a young 16-year-old young boy, and you damsels, you did not cover yourselves, but now you are covering, because they said, your son is so transcendently situated that he does not look at a body and say, this is woman, this is man. So he is so transcendently situated. And then, so such a person, Shaunaka Rishi is asking, how was he recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapura? While wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded. You see? So he is appearing like a madman, he is appearing dumb, he was appearing retarded. Ring a bell? Jadabharata also was like this. Right? So Shukadeva Goswami, he appeared dumb because he was not interested in Prajalpa. He was not interested in talking unwanted things. And he was not also interested in hearing unwanted things. So, he was just walking about like that. And then Shaunaka Rishi is continuing to ask, how did it so happen that Parikshit Maharaj met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Samvada Sambhut Tata Yatraisha Satvati Shrutihi. So, this Satvati Shruti, the essence of the Vedas, how did it happen to be sung by this exalted personality named Shukadeva Goswami? You know. So, here also Shaunaka Rishi also is giving an indication that this Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a Satvati Shruti. That is, it is actually a essence of all Vedic literature. And he is continuing to speak about Shukadeva Goswami. He says, Sago dohana matram hi griheshu grihamedhinam avekshate mahabhagas tirthikurvam stadashramam. That he is saying that this Shukadeva Goswami is accustomed to staying at the door of a householder, grihamedhi, only long enough for a cow to be milked. Sago dahana matram hi. That is, just enough time for a cow to be milked. Why? Because that is the only thing he would accept. You know, some very little bhiksha only this Shukadeva Goswami will accept from any grihastha. And that also, tirthi kurvam stadashramam. That is, they are saying, even that stopping he is doing only to purify that grihastha's residence. So actually, all these great personalities, these mendicants in the Vedic age, when they would visit the grihastha to accept some bhiksha, actually they are not coming like, we have this in Kali Yuga, we have this very wrong idea about what is bhiksha. You know, bhiksha in Kali Yuga, of course, is, you know, there is big mafia doing this bhiksha. And so people will come and beg for some alms, you know, they are considered to be the lowest and things like that. But in our Vedic culture, alms are given to those mendicants who have given up complete material life. And they will go and beg from door to door, madhukari, That means whatever a grihastha will give. It is on one hand showing their great renunciation, tyaga, and on the other hand, by taking this bhiksha and at that time giving some transcendental knowledge to those grihasthas, actually these great sadhus are elevating the grihasthas. That is why it is being spoken here that it is said that tirthi kurvam stadashramam. So actually these tirthas, these great devotees are going from door to door begging alms only to purify the alms giver. We must understand that. So whenever we are giving in charity, in bhiksha to a sannyasi, we must know that it is not to feed that sannyasi's hunger that we are giving. It is not to feed that sadhu's hunger that we are giving. It is to purify ourselves. Why? Because whatever bhiksha is given to a sadhu, in return that sadhu is giving invaluable transcendental knowledge. He is teaching us Krishna Bhakti. So, who is the actual gainer? The sadhu will get Madhugari or not get Madhugari. Either way, he is not affected by it. So, Shukadeva Goswami was behaving like this, like a complete avadhuta, and people were thinking that he is a mad person and whatnot. But it did not bother him one bit. Why? Because he is completely transcendental to this material situation. So, this is a symptom of somebody who is transcendently situated. And then Shaunaka Rishi is asking questions about Parikshit. He is asking that, he says that the birth and activities of the son of Abhimanyu, it is very wonderful. So please give us an explanation about that. And then next question he is asking, why did this Parikshit Maharaj give up everything to sit on the bank of Ganga and fast until death? And then he is continuing to ask, why should a powerful and young devotee king renounce his kingdom and life? And then he is saying something very important. He says that Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye ya uttama shloka parayana janai jivanti natmartham asau parashrayam mumocha nirvidya kutah kalevaram. That is, he is saying that those people who are devoted to Krishna, they are actually living for Shivaya lokasya. They are actually living for the auspiciousness of the entire world. They live for the welfare and happiness. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye who ya uttama shloka parayana janaha. Those devotees who are uttama shloka parayana, they are always speaking, they are experts in speaking about the uttama shloka, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They live actually for other people and they do not live for their selfish interest at all. So, even though this Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body which was shelter for others? What does that mean? It means that he was not only an ideal devotee, he was not only a Paka Vaishnava, but he was also a Chakravarti. He was also a king. You see? And because he was such a righteous dharmic king, they are asking there are a lot of people who were dependent on him. So then they are asking, so knowing all these things, how is it that he decided to fast till death? So this is the next question that Shaunakadis have asked. And then they are telling to Suta Maharshi, they are saying that actually you are an expert in the meaning of all the subjects except in some portions of Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all our questions. You see, this Suta Maharshi is actually an expert Puranic speaker. We will find him speak in as a speaker in several other Puranas apart from the Bhagavata Purana. So they are saying that you are so well versed, you are so well versed in Puranas. So actually explaining the Purana means, and explaining the Purana as per the Parampara actually means that you have very good knowledge about the Vedic literature. It is not possible otherwise. So Prabhupada very specifically speaks about this, that this is not this Bhagavata Purana Katha giver people, they do it like in a professional manner. But that is actually not out of any actual realized knowledge. But here the speaker is a realized personality, and that makes a lot of difference in the hearer. You will find how potent a speaker is depending on what impact he is having on the listener. So these great sages, they are already, the Shaunakadis are already very ripened sages. They are all very senior, very elder people, and they are people who have spent their lives doing only this. And you take all these people, Suta Goswami, Shukadeva Goswami, Vyasa Maharshi, these are all sages who have actually lived for others. They did not live for themselves, because they simply lived in the forest. They were very content with what was available from the forest. They never went after any material pursuits. They were not into the business of making money or planning for tomorrow, nothing. All the great personalities, all the great sages, the speakers of all this wonderful literature, we will find that all of them were living in one tree, living under one tree today and another tree day after, tomorrow, day after, like that. So these people are actually Paropakaris. Their only intention was that this should be spoken, this should be heard, and other people should benefit from hearing it. Okay, so Prabhupada very specifically again says in a purport that realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. That means you may be, you may be very well versed and you may be chanting all the 18,000 slokas of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you could still be an impersonalist. You could still be an impersonalist. Why? Because if you consider your chanting to be your profession, and if you are trying to impress the listener with your memory of reciting the 18,000 verses without actually internalizing even one verse, then actually there is no value to the recitation of the 18,000 verses. By no means am I deprecating those who can chant the 18,000 verses of the Bhagavatam. That is not the idea. But without internalizing the essence of what is contained in the Srimad Bhagavatam, however attractive a speaker may be, he actually cannot be of any use. You can be, you can be a very good speaker, a very good orator who can capture people while you speak, and then some speakers, they are very good entertainers, that is you sit in his discourse, his lecture, you wouldn't know how the time is passing, because he would be so witty and so funny and so entertaining. And then you have speakers who will actually change your life. So Shukadeva Goswami is a speaker like that. Suta Goswami is a speaker like that. These are people who actually, by their speaking, they reform the life of the listener. So that is the most important thing. So what is the realization of the person that speaks is very, very important for the listener, so that he will get the full benefit of what is being spoken. Otherwise, what will happen is that you will also hear, they will also speak, so many people will hear, nothing will change. So that is why here the speaker is actually being glorified by these personalities. And then it speaks about Vyasa Maharshi, who is, it comes to the subject of Vyasa Maharshi, that Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, he is named. His actual name is Krishna Dvaipayana because he is black in color. Dvaipayana because he was conceived in a dweep, in an island. He was born to Parashara Muni and Satyavati. And Vyasa Maharshi, one day, he was meditating on the bank of Saraswati. At that time, he could foresee the happenings of Kali Yuga. He saw what and what is going to go wrong in Kali Yuga. He could see rampant animal killing. He could see plundering, looting. He could see people are all hypocrites. He could see that Brahmanas have lost their potency. He could see that everywhere it is a Chandala civilization. So like that, he had very, very disturbing visions about what will happen in Kali Yuga. And whatever I said now is no exaggeration because it is all recorded by Vyasa Maharshi himself in Bhavishya Purana. Okay. So he was seeing that all these things are deteriorating like this. So he was thinking, in this circumstance, what can I actually do for all the common men, common for everyone, in all varnas, all ashramas, I want to do something that will benefit everybody, right from the Chandala up to the Brahmana. I want to do something. I want to do something for the welfare of everyone, whatever class he may belong to, whatever ashrama he may belong to, whatever may be his social status. I want to help all of them. So he saw that, the Veda, originally the Veda is one. And Vedas contain a whole lot of sacrifices, for purification. So Vyasa Maharshi, he took that one Veda and he divided it into 4. And then Itihasa and Purana, he separated and put it as 5th Veda, Panchama Veda. And he divided these and gave it to his principal disciples. So Paila Rishi, who is the disciple of Vyasa, he got the Rig Veda. Jaimini Rishi got Sama Veda. Vaishampayana got Yajur Veda. Angira, he got Atharva Veda. And Romaharshana, the father of Suta Goswami, he got the Puranas. That is how Suta became a Purana speaker. He took it up from his father. So, and then these 4 disciples of Vyasadeva, they taught their disciples wrote treatises on that. This is how this Vedic literature got developed through Vyasa, his disciples and his grand disciples, and so many, they branched out. They wrote their own theses based on their understanding, and then like that, various schools under this one Veda, which became 4 Vedas, and under those 4 Vedas there are so many different schools which teach, from each one from a different point of view. So after having done this, then he wrote, after doing compilation of the Vedic literature, then for Stri Shudra Dvija Bandhunam, he compiled the Mahabharata, the greatest itihasa of Mahabharata. That also was compiled by Vyasa Maharshi. And it is said that because Stri Shudra Dvija Bandhunam, they do not have adhikara to study Vedas. It is a question of adhikara, not by birth, but by quality. That is, by quality, if you have Brahminical quality, only then you are having the adhikara to approach Vedic literature, to study Shruti directly, to study Veda directly. You have to be a Brahmana by culture. You have to be a Brahmana by Swabhava Guna. That means you should have some inbuilt quality of a Brahmana. Then only you have the adhikara to learn Vedas. So Vyasa Maharshi's idea is what? He wants everyone, because everyone does not have the guna, does not have the quality of a Brahmana. But should that stop somebody from going back to Godhead? Should that stop somebody from getting the ultimate benefit? It should not. So that is why Vyasa Maharshi took it upon him that I must compile something so that it will benefit all kinds of people. And therefore, he compiled the Mahabharata. Ta eva veda durmedher dharyante purusher yatha evam chakara bhagavan Vyasa kripana vatsala. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intelligent men. And then continues, Stri Shudra Dvijabandhunam Trayina Shruti Gochara Karma Shreyasi Muthanam Shreya Evam Bhavediha Iti Bharatamakyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. So, Stri Shudra Dvijabandhunam Trayina Shruti Gochara. So, Gochara means comprehension. That means these three Shudra Dvijabandhunam, they cannot comprehend. They cannot comprehend due to their nature, their swabhava. So what did he do? He compiled the Itihasa called Mahabharata. And very interesting for us to note that within this Mahabharata, what did Vyasa Maharshi keep within this Mahabharata? He kept something like a hidden gem, that would actually contain all the essence of Vedas. And because it is part of Itihasa, everybody has got access to it. That is the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. You see? So everything is done with a grand plan to elevate all of us. We must understand this. It is not that the higher intellectual personalities did not have any plan. They always had a plan. And they planned things in such a way that nobody will escape. But in spite of that, we are all trying to escape. That is a different thing altogether. But Vyasa Maharshi also had this plan. That is why for Stri Shudra Dvijabandhunam, he has written this Karma Shreyasi Muthanam Shreya Evam Bhavediha. Because for them also Shreya Evam Bhaved. They also should get Shreya. They also should get the ultimate benefit. So for that he wrote the Iti Bharatamakyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. So the great Vyasa Muni, he wrote the Mahabharata so that anybody of any class, they can sit and read the Mahabharata and actually take advantage of it and get back to the supreme position that any living entity can get. And in the next 5 verses, it speaks about how Vyasa Maharshi was contemplating on his unhappiness. So Vyasa Maharshi started thinking that I have actually lived my whole life simply for the benefit of everyone. Loka Kalyana, that is what a sadhu always desires. He wants the entire world to become happy. and not by some shortcut material method, not by blessing you to, may you get the lottery this time and, may you win a crore of rupees or may you win 100 crore or whatever it is. No, not that happiness. The sadhu, when he is looking at Loka Kalyana, that is, he wants every common man to be able to enjoy transcendental happiness. So this is the Kalyana that the sadhu is looking for, and Vyasa Maharshi is thinking, actually I have done everything, Throughout my life I have been engaged in this work only. But still I am not satisfied. So now he is beginning to think, why am I not satisfied? And he is thinking of his efforts that he underwent very strict disciplinary vows. He had so much of tapasya. And then he worshipped the Vedas, the Guru and the altar of sacrifice. That means he did all the yajnas properly. He worshipped Guru, Guru Aradhanam also he has done. And he has worshipped Veda Aradhanam also he has done. And he abided by all the rulings. He did not, move out of the way. He has done everything Vidhi Purvakam only. And he also established how important it is to follow the disciplic succession. And through Mahabharata, he wrote that also. And then he is thinking that in spite of doing all these things, I am still unhappy. I am feeling incomplete, although I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. So Vyasa is thinking that actually there is nothing lacking in me, because I have done everything that I am supposed to do. But still I feel incomplete. That means there is something lacking. Is it not? So then he is thinking. He is thinking and he is getting the answer. He is thinking that maybe I did not speak about something. That is why I have become unhappy. Kimva bhagavata dharma na prayena nirupita priya paramahamsanam taeva hyachyuta priya. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear to both perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. So Vyasa himself has, because after all he is Vyasa. It is not that he doesn't know. But he is contemplating and finally he understands. Priya paramahamsanam taeva hyachyuta priyaha. So it is the paramahamsas also, for them it is very dear. What? Kimva bhagavata dharma na prayena nirupitaha. Because I did not discuss Bhagavata dharma, which is actually Priya Paramahamsanam Hi Achyuta Priyaha. So for it is Achyuta Priya, very dear to Achyuta, and it is very dear to the Paramahamsas. So I have not spoken about that. So now he has fixed. See, this is how a great personality thinks. That analyzing, looking inwards and finding the reason and then acting upon it. This is how a realized devotee behaves. This is how a realized Mahatman speaks. This is how he acts, And then Tasyaivam khilamatmanam manyamanasya khidyata krishnasya narado bhyagat ashramam pragudahritam. So like this, Narada Muni, he reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. So actually Vyasa Maharshi was feeling a total emptiness, not because he did not have knowledge, not that he lacked knowledge, but Bhagavata Dharma is something that is beyond knowledge. You see? It is beyond the monist, it is beyond the impersonalist. So actually the monist is not considered to be a Paramahamsa. So whatever else he has compiled until then, the monist will be very perfectly happy. But it is not so priya to the Paramahamsas. So, Tamabhijnaya sahasa pratyuthaya agatam muni pujayamasa vidhivan naradam surapujitam. As the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. So, Pujyam asa vidhivan naradam surapujyam. Vidhi means Brahma here. You know? And he is actually the original student and he is also the original teacher. Who? Brahma. Why? Because Brahma, tene Brahma hridaya adikave muhyanti yat sureha. Brahma actually got the entire knowledge planted in his heart directly by the Supreme Lord. And who is Brahma's first student? Brahma's first student is Narada Muni. So, who can be a better guru to Vyasa than Narada Muni? So, Narada Muni being the son of Brahma, the first disciple of Brahma, he is actually being offered the same honor as Brahmaji would have been offered. So, like that, Narada Muni has now arrived at the ashrama of Vyasa Maharshi. And we all know that whenever Narada Muni arrives like this, at the beginning of any transcendental literature, then you will see that that literature takes a completely different turn. You know, Srimad Bhagavatam is very similar like this we will find in Ramayana also. You know, Vatmiki is sitting in his ashram and then Narada Muni walks in. You know, and then Narada Muni will ask him, how are you, Valmiki, like this. You know, then Valmiki will ask a question back to Narada Muni. And then Narada Muni will speak the entire Ramayana. And then Valmiki will sit and write it in 7 sargas, 24,000 slokas. But the initial seed is sown by Narada Muni. You know, he will give the essence and he will go. You know, because this is actually empowering others. You know, we all speak about, you know, empowering people, right? I am telling you today that you will not find any other personality who has empowered more people than Narada Muni. And Narada Muni has empowered and inspired so many people into doing so many great things. You know, Ramayana is one example. So we got the Adi Kavyam. It is also by the mercy of Narada Muni, who gave the seed of it to Vatmiki and now told him that now you develop on this. You know, simply one question was asked. You know, Vatmiki spoke about 16 gunas, you know, 16 Kalyana gunas, and he asked, is there such a person like this? This is the only question that was asked by Vatmiki, and the entire Ramayana followed. See, so similarly we are going to find here now in Srimad Bhagavatam also that Narada Muni will ask in the next chapter. In our next session we will be talking about that, how that conversation will develop and how the Srimad Bhagavatam actually gets compiled, written down, spoken down by Vyasa Maharshi, all because of the instruction from this one great personality called Devarshi Narada. So everywhere we find there is the ultimate glorification of the Supreme Lord is there. You will find Narada Muni somewhere in that scene, either as a hidden Karana or a Pratyaksha Karana, or he'll be there on the side, he'll be a listener, he will be, you know, an impactful personality. somewhere Narada Muni will be there in the picture. So, and we also know that anybody who is a disciple of Narada Muni, you will find that they are the most celebrated devotees. So such a great personality this Narada Muni is. And when we continue to cover the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will also learn more about this wonderful personality called Narada Muni. So now we stop here. The chapter 4 is getting concluded when Narada Muni enters the ashram of Vyasa Maharshi, and Vyasa Maharshi is paying obeisances and giving seat of honor to Narada Muni. This is how chapter 4 of the first canto gets concluded. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam Granth Raj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.